and I'm standing outside the Hub Culture Ice House in Davos. Delighted to be joined by Ed Boyden, professor at MIT Media Lab. Thanks very much for coming along.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So tell me, well, I'm a little cold actually. Tell me a little bit about why you're here at Davos and what you're going to be talking about this week.
Sure. So I direct a group at the MIT Media Lab that tries to solve intractable brain disorders like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's. But what we've been figuring out is that there's a generalized approach that you can take to solving intractable problems. And a lot of different problems fall into that category. People talk a lot about education and intractable cancers and climate change and all sorts of stuff. How do you get a handle on a problem where there's so many moving parts and so many interactions?
So tell me about, for example, your work on molecules within cancer. What have you sort of discovered there?
So the big difference, I would argue, between a lot of the 21st century problems that makes them different from, let's say, 20th century triumphs like the computer and the internet and the laser, is that unlike 20th century problems, our problems have so many different moving parts. You have to keep track of all of them. And so what we're trying to do is to build technologies to let you map everything that's going on in a system. Mm-hmm. So just as an example, for problems like cancer or for brain disorders, what we're trying to do is to take these tumor samples, for example, mm-hmm. and we actually synthesize inside the tumor a chemical that's very much like the stuff in baby diapers. It mm-hmm. swells when you add water. Mm-hmm. And then we can take the actual object and blow it up to make it bigger to the point where you can actually see and map the molecules inside of it. Mm-hmm. Our hope then is to really make new drug targets that can actually allow you to cure cancers maybe by targeting them in a very focused and side effect free way.
So I'm interested in how did you discover that technique? Well, how did you discover that to use a chemical that was inside of a baby diaper?
So we often begin by trying to think of every possible way of solving a problem. Mm-hmm. Should you zoom in? Should you try to zoom out? Should you try to map shapes of things, map molecules? And we've developed strategies that help people think about all the different strategies for solving a problem. And this came out on top because it's the only way to really solve the problem of making room for little barcodes that you can attach to each molecule to tell them apart from each other. You have to make room, and to make room you have to separate them by blowing them up and make them go apart from each other.
So if you look at that kind of problem, how do you take your approach to that problem and look at other big problems in the world, poverty, for example?
Yeah, so what we're finding is that lots of other big problems with lots of interacting parts are also incompletely mapped. Mm-hmm. And very often people think they're going after big data. They're looking at all the different kinds of factors that they can imagine. But very often it's the factors that people don't imagine that are really important for understanding them. So for example, if you look at poverty and education and crime, three big areas of interest at the forum, mm-hmm. They're all interlocking, and you can't really probably solve one without addressing the other. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that I often try to help people think about is how to break out of their comfort zone and to really start to go after aspects of problems that they don't know about and to be as comprehensive as possible. People like to talk about big data right now, but very often I think the data sets that they're getting are a small fraction of what they need to truly understand a problem.
And thank you so much for stopping by the Hub Culture Pavilion here in the snow, and I'm Edie Lash.
Great. Good talking to you.